Welcome to the Winning in Business podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Rissy, and I love talking to business professionals, leaders, and entrepreneurs who are winning in business. Are you ready to reach your next level of success? If so, join us on the Winning in Business podcast as I interview entrepreneurs, business professionals, and leaders who share how they've risen to success. Before we begin, go ahead, hit subscribe and the notification button so you'll be notified each time a new episode is released. Plug in and settle in. You're about to be inspired to rise up to your next level of success. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Winning in Business. This is your hostess, Kelly Rissy. And today I am here with Claire Chandler. And Claire is an executive leadership advisor. And she is the president and founder of a boutique consultancy that helps C-level executives in large organizations get their teams to work more effectively in less time, with less cultural resistance so they can accelerate their business growth. She taps into 25 years of experience in people leadership, human resources, and business ownership to help leadership teams work together. And she holds certificates in strategic HR leadership from Cornell School of Industrial and Labor Relations, a master's degree from the New Jersey Institute of Technology, and a bachelor's degree from Fairfield University. And she has appeared as a guest on over 100 podcasts and is the author of several books on leadership and business strategy, which I'm sure she'll share more about as we dive into more about her. But Claire, I want to thank you for being on the podcast today.
Thank you, Kelly. It's so great to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited. So why don't you just start with telling us, how did you get into doing what you do?
So how long is your podcast? So I am a self-proclaimed corporate advisor. I spent the bulk of my career after college in corporate America, after, by the way, swearing I was never going to work in a big company because that's just not really my background. But lo and behold, that's where the opportunities were. And in 2011, in spring of 2011, I was the vice president of human resources for a large global organization, traveling a lot, leading a great team, learning quite a bit. And all of that came to a screeching halt because I was diagnosed with cancer. And so that forced me to go from 150 miles an hour to zero, right? Had to take time off of work, had to deal with this. This was not something that I could delegate. And in that time off, I took about a month off for surgery and some follow-up treatment, et cetera. I finally couldn't outrun that voice in my head that kept trying to ask me, are you doing what you're passionate about? And I had to finally admit that the answer was no. And once you have that answer, you have to do something with that, right? You can't just sort of go, okay, well, I'm not, but let's go back to work. When you go up against cancer or any sort of transformational experience, it really kind of shakes you to your core and it wakes you up, right? And it literally reminds you life is too short to do things that you're not passionate about. So I got well. I am cancer-free today. I went back to work. I had a long and honest talk with my boss. I gave notice, and then I went out into the great unknown of being a solopreneur.
Yes, the great unknown.
It's different every day.
What was the okay. So let's go. There's so many things I want to talk about here, right?
Let's do it.
First of all, I want to talk about, just what you said, coming from what I do, right? Of helping people really manage their stress, really look at their life. And as you saw, when you're going 150 miles an hour, if you don't stop and slow down, something's going to make you slow down.
Yep.
Right. And that is just the first, people need to really stop and understand that, because something will smack them in the face that makes them slow down if they don't really start to do that themselves. And for you, were signs coming along the way prior to that? You know what I mean? how long were you going at 150 miles an hour? And did you know you needed to slow down beforehand?
In hindsight, it was glaringly obvious.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in the midst of it, I was working for a company, and I had been there at that point for close to 15 years. And I loved the people I worked with. I didn't love all the people I worked for, but I loved the people I worked with, right?
Yeah.
And they're always the hardest to leave. It's interesting because there's and I'll tell you a quick story that was, in hindsight, emblematic of why I should have, left sooner.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the office, and it was one of these weeks in the month that I wasn't actually on the road. And I think I was returning to my office from the ladies' room. And my boss stopped me in the hall, and he said, "You need to tone down your walk." And I said, "Sorry, what?" He said, your walk. It's so bouncy, and it's so happy. And like, you're making like the other people in HR, I was working in HR, nervous, like something they don't, like you're up to something. So you need to tone down your walk. I said, okay, thanks for that. And went back to my office. And I certainly didn't change how I walk. I mean, people have commented on how I walk my entire life. Okay. That it's very bouncy and, whatever, and springy. My husband calls it my strut. And it's, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure we could psychoanalyze why I walk the way I walk, but I'm a generally happy person. Mm-hmm. And so looking back, it was so emblematic of corporate cultures, right? That advertise for people with an entrepreneurial spirit, that promise you on the front end that here finally is a working environment where you can truly express yourself and be your authentic self. And the moment you lean into that unique personality, they go, "Oh, not so fast. That doesn't fit into the tightly lidded box." Right. And so I'll just tell kind of a part B to that story. As I was back at work, it was before I had left, but I was still going for like follow-up blood work and, all that sort of thing. And I remember one day I was going in for getting some blood work. And as I was leaving, and I was walking back through the waiting room to go to the exit, this woman comes up to me and stops me. And she said, "I have to tell you, you have the happiest walk I've ever seen." And it just made my day, because this is the last place I wanted to be. And I thought, that's why I don't tone down my walk. And that's why moving out into the great unknown, leaving a quote unquote secure corporate job was the right decision. Yes.
That's great. So I'm going to save my next question, because you might bring it up as we move on. So what are some of the big ahas that you want to share that have really contributed to your success? And if not, I'll come back with my question, but let's see what comes up.
Yes.
I'm excited to hear these.
There are so many, but if I have to narrow it down to three, they're the three A's, and the A's would be awareness, acceleration, and alignment. For me, and again, a lot of our wisdom is gained through hindsight, right? But I think first and foremost, becoming really self-aware of what I enjoy doing, what I am good at doing, and what I am not good at doing is a first very crucial step to narrowing down what I believe in, right? And what sort of lights me up. And it kind of makes the next steps in your path a lot clearer. So that sort of self-awareness is very key. The second aha for me is this concept of acceleration. And, I strongly believe we have to find ways to accelerate trust with the people in our orbit. Part of that is, and Brene Brown is the expert on this, so I will not dwell, but on this power of vulnerability, of being authentic, of not trying to be something we're not, of not trying to say that we have all the answers, because our people and our audiences know that we don't. We're human, and therefore we don't know everything. We're not perfect. But accelerating that trust, part of that is Again, really, really being authentic, really being genuine, and also getting comfortable in uncomfortable situations. So sort of finding ways to accelerate that trust by first being as authentic as possible. And then that third one around alignment, probably is the biggest aha, right? If you work on self-awareness and you work on accelerating trust, at least doing your part, it's this notion of aligning what you do with why you do it. And for me, the clearer I continue to get on what lights me up and how I can bring my gifts into the world, the easier it has been for me to say no. And I know, especially as a woman coming out of corporate, having my own business, doing what I do, we don't tend as a species to be very comfortable saying no, right? We are expected to be nurturers. We are expected to be supportive. We are expected to be people pleasers. And the sooner you can recognize that that does no one any good, that yes, you should serve, but you shouldn't necessarily please. Mm-hmm. And you should bring into alignment truly what lights you up and what is going to bring you joy. And you sort of serve from that place of abundance. It really is the path, I believe, is the path to fulfillment. At least it has been for me.
That's, oh my gosh, I love that. Yes. Two things that you said. One, back when you were talking about acceleration, is really getting uncomfortable. I think that is, when I don't know, there's just people that aren't willing to get uncomfortable, or maybe it's there's times in their life, right, when we just stay in our comfort zone. You know what I mean? And it does us zero good. Zero.
Well, and there's a reason that the saying exists: the devil you know is better than the devil you don't.
Yes.
A lot of people we come across are either discontented with their station in life professionally, or they're flat out miserable. And, they sort of resign themselves to, well, that's why they call it work, and you're not supposed to love what you do. And, when I hear people say that in my presence, I go, whoa, says who?
Right.
Right.
And when did you decide that?
And when did you decide that? Because if you let other people decide that for you, you're missing the point of this game we're playing called life.
Yeah. Yes. And the greatness, the growth, like everything happens outside of your comfort zone. You just have to be willing to take the risk and to see what happens. And I also, something that I'm really talking to one of my groups a lot about is just having the faith, the universe, God, source, whatever you call it, that the universe has your back.
Yeah.
And just step out of your comfort zone and it's going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to find new things. And you're right. Like, some people would rather, they're miserable in their comfort zone, miserable. Yep. And we cage ourselves. We cage ourselves in this cage when at any minute, sometimes the door is even open and we keep ourselves in the cage, or at any minute we can open the door and walk out, and yet we keep ourselves caged.
Well, and it's so funny because, earlier when I was doing my intro and I said, I ventured out into the great unknown of being an entrepreneur, you kind of rolled your eyes, relating to that, right? Because it is unknown. And year to year, day to day, month to month, there's kind of an excitement of sort of writing your story as you're living it. And, I think about that because, in my closing weeks in corporate, when I was leaving and it was, the word was out that I was moving on, et cetera. People were kind of first of all, thought I was crazy. Are you sure you know what you're doing? And I'm like, not at all. I don't have the first clue. I don't have a business plan. I don't have clients waiting to work for me or work with me or whatever. I just know I need to go and find something different. And, people that I had worked with for years were like, I don't know that I could do what you do. But on the, in the next sentence, they go, but do you have to be smiling so much? Like, you haven't stopped smiling since it's been made public that you're leaving. And I said, because there's this promise of potential, right? There's no guarantee that I was going to be successful. but there was this promise of going out and, to your point, finding out what the universe had in store.
Yeah.
But I knew the answers weren't within my corporate job.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, okay. Now I got to think about the alignment piece and what I wanted to, like, there was something that you said in there that I just loved. Maybe we already talked about it. You said, what you do and why you do it. Well, maybe it'll come to me.
Well, and learning to say no, right?
Learning to say no was probably that. Because I feel like that is a big, we are definitely, even from the time we're raised, we are taught to say, yeah, like, yes, yes, yes. You know what I mean? Like, just, yep. I don't know. I just feel like it's always like, yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll do that. And at some point, especially women, we have to know when to say no. And it is life changing when you can start putting those boundaries down. And, I think for women, the biggest thing is that if I say no, people won't like me. And, then, my thing around that is, well, then who are your friends? Because if your friends are only liking you because you're saying yes, or if your church, if your organization, if your work, if you're whatever, they're only liking you because you're saying yes.
Yeah.
You might need to reevaluate that, because there should be other reasons why, you know what I mean?
Well, so here's what's ironic about that. We are groomed and expected to be nurturers. And as a species, we're all expected to have this maternal instinct, and not everyone does, but everyone just sort of looks at the archetype of the mom as the one who sets boundaries and the one who tells her children no. So why is it so counterintuitive to society that we should also, as women, set clearer boundaries for ourselves?
Yes.
Like it feels like a double standard, doesn't it?
Yes, and I was thinking the same thing this morning about how, as women, we are so quick to go, oh, you need $3,000 for my child to play sports and go here and blah, blah, blah. And women are the last ones to invest in themselves.
Yep.
Right. And we want to look at, like, why are men so ahead of us? Oh, because men invest in themselves. Men are quick to hire coaches. Men are quick, like, they just do that. You know what I mean? And they will invest in themselves. They'll go to training. They will do that. And women are like, oh, I can't spend any money on myself. Like, I can't do that. And well, here we are.
It's so, and it's so interesting, because I know that you do a lot of coaching as well in your practice. When I am coaching or talking to male leaders, most of what they struggle with is, how do I get my people to follow me more and to execute the results that I need them to execute? Mm-hmm. And that's sort of the biggest hurdle we kind of start with. When I speak with women, when I'm coaching, the biggest hurdle that they have to get past is giving themselves that permission.
Yes.
One, to set boundaries, and two, to take time out for themselves. Because when we say no, we feel guilty. Mm-hmm. We say, I'm going to carve out 1 hour in my afternoon to either help my child with homework, or even more importantly, quite honestly, for your own personal well-being, go to the gym or go do something for pleasure, go for a walk, go read a book, go binge watch, trashy TV, whatever it is. Right. And what's the first thing? Oh, no, I can't do that. I'm supposed to be working. Mm-hmm. We don't give ourselves permission, and we feel guilty about taking time for ourselves. And I did not coin this phrase, but it stays with me. We cannot fill from an empty cup.
Right.
If we are in a place of lack, if we are completely drained, if we are not, finding joy for ourselves, how can we give from a place of abundance? And when there are children in the room, how can we model for them the kind of life we dream of for them if we don't live it ourselves?
Right. Yes.
Getting me all fired up.
Woo. Me too. Okay. So my next question, going from, like, corporate, and as you said, into the great unknown, right? What were, I want to know first, what were your biggest challenges from that? Like from, going from there to there. And then just what challenges do you still face today? I always like to ask that question because, again, I feel like as women, and as business owners, we face challenges, right? And I always want everyone to know, like, we are not alone in the challenges that we face, because we often, we sit in our homes and we're like, I'm the only one that feels this way. Okay, no, you know what I mean? So that's why I like to bring up the challenges, is because we're not alone. And so I like to bring that up. So talk about just going from corporate to your own business. What were your biggest challenges for that?
Yeah, I would say my biggest challenges starting out were around clarity and confidence. Clarity around, of all the things that I could do drawing on my corporate career and of all the things that I enjoyed doing, what was going to be my niche, right? What was I going to kind of stand upon as my brand and as my offer? And it took me longer than, looking back, it really should have, to narrow in on, really helping leaders at the top of an organization kind of, build their culture from within, right? But the confidence piece, speaking of brand, came around, nobody knows me as Claire Chandler. And at the time I wasn't married, so I wasn't Chandler, but no one knows me as Claire, the individual consultant or advisor. And so at first, and we were talking about this before we started recording, I first focused on, first of all, just kind of trying to just bring in revenue to prove that I could be out on my own, right? But once I kind of got over that first hurdle, what was my brand going to be? What was my company name going to be? Because when you spend a couple of decades in corporate, you are used to, and your muscle memory dictates that you are part of some other company name. And so I had convinced myself that to really be taken seriously as a brand and as a person who could contribute value, I had to stand behind a company name. And so I formed my company. I got an LLC. I got, all the branding. I got the nice business cards and website, blah, 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 blah. And when I look back at that, and I said to you right before we started recording that I have intentionally kind of shifted away from leading with that company name and coming back to Claire Chandler, because I am the brand. I don't have other employees. I am, purposefully and intentionally not, building a company where I'm going to have a massive staff. So I am the brand. And it took me, again, longer than it should have, looking back, to just lean into my own personality, right? That concept of not toning down my walk, I should have translated that into my business brand and just emerged right from the jump as Claire Inc. And so it's kind of a long-winded answer, but for me, those were the biggest two challenges, were getting clarity and gaining confidence.
Yeah, good. So what now do you face as, what is a challenge for you?
I would say my biggest challenge is dealing with what I call energy leaks. So I do, especially now that we have kind of reemerged from the depths of COVID, we are back out in the world on site with clients. And as much of an introvert as I consider myself to be, and I didn't enjoy COVID certainly, but I enjoyed the excuse not to have to go out into the world. It turned out I missed it. And I know that my best work comes out of me when I am physically in the same room with a group of leaders. It is much more difficult to replicate that sort of energy when you're doing it remotely. It's not impossible, but it's not the same, right? And so when I'm, in the middle of a room working with clients, doing leadership retreats or doing group coaching or doing strategic planning, et cetera, I give them 100% of me and I leave it all out on the field. And I, purposely then kind of schedule time afterwards to recover, because it takes a lot out of me. So that's still the biggest challenge I face, is really being intentional about, all the things we just talked about, like making time for me and making time to refill my own cup and do things that really feed my own values, my own motivators, and kind of refill me, so that the next client isn't deprived of that energy.
Yes. Yes. Oh, that's great. Thank you for sharing. So moving forward for you, what are your goals? Like, what are your goals in life and in your business?
Okay, so my biggest lofty goal is for to kind of get to a point with my business, and I feel like I'm on the verge of being able to basically work from wherever I want.
Mm-hmm.
I can sort of do that now, but I'm a little bit of a homebody, and I've got, my office sort of set up the way I like. So it's a little bit more difficult to just roll up my laptop and replicate that feeling. But my husband and I during the week work in different states. And so we actually only see each other on the weekends. And so one of my big life goals is to get to a point where it doesn't matter where his job takes him. We're gonna be together, and we're gonna figure it out, and hopefully within a stone's throw of a beach, which is where we live now. So it's kind of hard to move away from that. Professionally, it's to I'm going to say to scale, but it's to scale the impact that I can bring to clients, because like I said, like the way that I have built my practice is not for me to have a bunch of employees or to certify my approach and have other people do it for me. That is where I get my joy, and that's where I get to kind of share my gifts, so to speak. But there is only one of me. And so, I am continuing to find ways to kind of scale the impact that I can help a company to achieve. Right. And I'm still sort of, figuring out and thinking through what form that takes. But that, combined with being able to do that from wherever my husband and I decide to live, is kind of the ideal match.
And am I correct that when you work with, when you go in and work with the executive teams, are you doing retreats?
I am primarily right now doing retreats. It seems to be sort of the big on trend need, which is great because I love it, but it's also great because it's to me, there's been sort of a real tide shift by executive leaders to recognize that they can't just hand out a strategic plan and expect their leadership team to go and execute it. They have to build buy-in, and they have to accelerate trust. So that's largely what I am specializing in lately, is to help leadership teams do that.
That's great. That's great. Good. Yes, I do. And it is I think for those of us, I consider myself kind of in that same position as you, right? Not taking on a ton of employee, whatever, doing it myself. And then the like, how are we scaling to make the most impact, right? It's always about the impact, because the bottom line is, who can we help? Because we know that there are people, there are companies, there are teams that need help with our expertise.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That we can go. And so then it's I was coaching one-on-one, and it's like, that's great, except how many people can I truly touch until I can get in and make more of an impact? Yeah. Because as we know, just stress management is huge. And I think that the interesting thing, just going off of corporations, is with stress, they're often scared to touch stress, because they're like, we are not mental health professionals. You know what I mean? So they don't even want to deal with it at all.
And it's a can of worms, they think, right? They're afraid to acknowledge that and then to bring in some sort of an intervention to deal with that. Right. Because it's like, well, then look at what we started. But there is a tipping point, and let's just get out in front of it if we can.
Yes. Okay. So what accomplishments, and I'm hoping, I don't even know if you don't bring this up in your accomplishments, let's still talk about it in a minute. Okay. But and that's your books. What accomplishments are you really proud of that you'd like to share?
There's one that happened a couple of months ago, but probably 6 months ago now, that still just fills me with awe. For lack of a better term. So like I said, I've been doing a lot of these leadership retreats lately. And this one organization had called me up and said, we've got this newly formed leadership team. Can you come in and do like a half day strategic planning with them to sort of, kind of build out the milestones? We know where we want to be in 5 years, but we need to sort of work together and build out the milestones. And I said, happy to do that as day 2. Only if, again, this is me setting boundaries, right? So you're proud of me now. I'm getting better at this. But, I said, only if we do a day 1 around team dynamics. And because we have to build trust. This was a team that the combination of people had never existed before, right? These were people who either came in from the outside. They may have been from, there were a couple of companies that merged together. So they were from legacy organizations and new, and they had never been in this combination before. And I said, we have to work on that first. Because I absolutely, to my core, believe if your teams do not trust each other, you are not going to grow. I don't care how compelling your mission is, how buttoned up your strategy is, or how important your work is to the world. If your teams don't trust each other, especially at the leadership level, they're not going to fulfill that, just full stop. And so we got them together for day one. And as they walked into the room, I was just sort of watching how they were interacting with each other. And they were not really interacting much at all. And it wasn't so much that they didn't trust each other, like they were suspicious. They just didn't know each other. And so they were not comfortable walking in their own unique way, so to speak. And if they did talk to each other before we got started, it was just to sort of touch base or, connect on some quick business item. Fine. Okay. So this is what I'm dealing with. That's great. By the end of that day, where we focused on everything from raising self-awareness to demonstrating vulnerability to working together in more, cohesive ways. By the end of that first day, not only were they talking with each other, they were joking around with each other. They were respectfully making fun of the ranking executive in the room. We all went out to dinner and they were practically vacuuming around our table because we didn't want to leave. And the next day, it was like this amazing transformation of them coming together very collaboratively to build out what the strategic plan milestones needed to be. And at one point, I just sort of stood back and let them go because it was just, I almost had tears in my eyes because to see them work together in a way where they were literally leaning in and not defending their turf was amazing. And I said to them at the top of the meeting, I am the least important person in the room. I am here to create an opportunity and to create an environment that facilitates you all pulling out of yourselves the best of what you have to offer in the most authentic way possible, so that when we combine that, you can achieve great things. Right? That's really why I'm here. And so when I look back at that, I have case studies of ways I've helped companies kind of improve earnings and profitability and all of that and retention, and all that's wonderful. But this story still sticks with me because to be in that room and witness what they went through together and what they achieved, just even as, that trust factor, which is so core and so fundamental to growth. It was an honor to witness that.
Well, and I think hearing it from this side, the other things that stood out for me is, number one, knowing that you as an expert knew that they needed that first day, and them honoring that and letting that first day happen. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like them going, oh, okay, well, she said we should do that, so we should do that. And I think that's huge. I mean, seriously, you know what I mean? Because you know what you know. And that needed to be in place for day two to happen.
Yeah. And it's, and it's so interesting because all of these larger organizations, for some reason, and I hear this over and over, they feel like they need to really hear a message like that. They've got to invite someone in from the outside. And I always find that very interesting. It's like, this is the same message, very likely, the C-level leaders have been trying to say, and either they were far too polished, or they just haven't built the trust yet. But for some reason, walking in the door, I've got more credibility because here's this third-party consultant advisor who works with large organizations. So I must know what I'm talking about. Well, the CEO you just hired must know what he or she is talking about. So why aren't they garnered that same sort of first level credibility? Right. It's just very interesting to me.
Interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. Okay. So anything else you'd like to share of your accomplishments that you're proud of?
Well, apparently I should bring up my books. So,
yeah. Share your books.
So,
I think it's a big deal when you write a book, personally.
You know what? It's interesting. I had somebody ask me the other day, because I've written a few now. They're all on Amazon. I'd love for your audience to go check them out. Somebody asked me the other day which one so far has been my favorite. And I have to say the first one. The first one came out a few years ago now, and it was a little bit of wasn't even a labor of love, because I don't know how many books you've written, but it's sort of like we start and stop, right? And we have these grand ideas for what the book is going to be. And I finally got out of my own way. So hear that, audience, we have to get out of our own way and simplify what is not really complicated. And so I kind of took the pressure off of writing the book, and I just wrote a book. And it's called The Whirlpool Effect. And it's all about the impact that really well-defined and very intentional, very mission-focused leadership can do to impact the performance of a company. And the whirlpool effect is a metaphor. So if you will indulge me, I'll tell you a quick story. So I grew up in New Jersey, and in the summers, it's very hot and humid. And my house was not the cool one on the block. We were the last ones to get a color TV. Yes, I'm that old. We were the last ones to get Atari. And we never had the swimming pool in the backyard. Okay. So my friend down the street had a swimming pool in the backyard. So of course she was far more popular, and she's pretty cool. She's still one of my best friends today. But that's where we would all hang out. And, all neighborhood kids would hang out in the pool. And invariably, sometime during the course of the afternoon, some kid would yell out, "Whirlpool." And we all immediately knew what that meant. So whatever else we were doing, clowning around, we would just start following each other in a circle. And after a couple of laps, we would just pick our feet up and kind of float along with the current. And it was just this cool thing. Now, you clearly have that same kind of a memory, because as soon as I said whirlpool, you knew exactly what that meant.
Yes.
And I realized as I looked back at that childhood memory, it is a metaphor for leadership, because what did that require? It required a very clear, simple message that everyone immediately attached meaning to. They could clearly see the end goal, and they enthusiastically contributed their best efforts to fulfilling it. And I think as leaders, we overcomplicate the simple, right? And so that really kind of became the metaphor for the book, and sort of the lessons in the book around, why you are causing churn versus the whirlpool effect, and how that's going to lead to, much greater things in your business.
That's great. That's great. Okay. So name the other books you have as well. So you have the Whirlpool Effect.
So the Whirlpool Effect, I'm not going to remember them all. There are a few now. I have the Decision Dashboard. I have a book that I co-wrote with a fellow consultant by the name of Ben Baker called Leading Beyond a Crisis. That was born out of, we were all in lockdown. He's in Northwest Canada. I'm on the East Coast of New Jersey. We have never met in person. We were introduced by a connection we had in common. We got to talking. We decided to record it as a series of YouTube videos, and we transcribed it and turned it into a book. And then I have a book called, I'm going to botch the title because I didn't know I was going to be quizzed on this, but it's all about how to turn new leaders into performance accelerators. So for organizations that have new leaders, how to flatten the learning curve and get leaders kind of in the right direction as quickly as possible.
Okay. So I don't know what time we started, so I don't know how long this is going, and that's okay, because I want to go back, because I feel like for the listeners, what you just said a second ago in the book that you co-wrote, okay, this is powerful for people to, I'm just going to say, understand the power of a connection.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like he's in Canada, you're on the East Coast, somebody introduced you.
Yep.
You did some YouTubes together, and then it turned into a book. I mean, by the power of a connection, I think that is just the greatest thing ever. And I'm going to share, I was just in a magazine article, and in there, I also shared that one of the women that I network with, she introduced me, and I spoke for someone that she's in an organization with. And out of that, I got a client who then led me to a speaking organization that ended up, it's a big, huge travel consortia. And I ended up speaking in Vegas in front of the largest audience that I had spoken in front of. And
Wow.
and this person also referred me to like 4 other clients across the United States. A power of a connection. You know what I mean? Like, I think that is just, you know what I mean? Like, so cool of how all that happens. And I think we just always need to be aware of that, of the power of a connection, because I just think you just never know. So anyway, what do you have to say about that?
So I love that you brought me back to that particular book, and that is what just resonated with you, because I do think people really undervalue or underestimate the power of connection, and not using geographical distance or COVID lockdowns or differences of perspective to be artificial barriers, right? Connection is so important. First of all, if you're co-creating a book or anything else for that matter, but connection is so fundamental also to strong fit cultures, right? I know your jam is health and wellness. And, part of what makes a culture great is if it's fit, if it's strong, if it's healthy. Yes. And you can interpret that in multiple ways, right?
Yeah,
but
right.
Part of how you strengthen a culture and part of how you build a culture is by focusing on making connections for people. So the leaders at the very top have to make a connection for people between their individual roles and what we are all fighting for as a shared mission. But they also have to connect their own personal beliefs, their own personal interests, and their own quirky personality to other people. Because if we just start with business, yes, I realize these are your employees and you are paying them a wage in exchange for some work or contribution, right? That's all wonderful. But people can go and get that anywhere. And they are expressing more and more through the Great Resignation, through quiet quitting, through presenteeism, through low engagement, through flat out bad behavior, that they're not going to stand for or stay long in a culture that does not align with their values.
Yeah.
Right. So this connection, this alignment, this understanding that people don't just want to be in a company anymore. They want to believe in what you believe, and they want to belong to a community of people that they enjoy spending time with. And I know that sounds grandiose, but when you really sit with that for a minute, it is so super simple. And
right.
Again, leaders are overcomplicating what is really simple.
Well, and if you think about it, I mean, where do we spend most of our day?
That's right. It's not with our families.
It is not with our family. By the time, you know what I mean? By the time we get home, then we eat dinner, we're running the kids all over the place. They get home, they go to bed, we go to bed. Like, I mean, it's really most of our day is spent with our colleagues at the work environment. I mean, I work here, right? But right. I'm going to make sure that my work environment is like I like.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah. Oh my gosh, that was great. I love the way you just brought that in and tied it all up nicely. So that was beautiful. Okay. So where can my listeners connect with you?
So they can go to my website, which again, I am standing in my own personal brand again. So it's clairechandler.net.
Perfect.
And I'm also on LinkedIn pretty much every day. So if people are on LinkedIn, please reach out, say hello, send a message, interact with me. I love to get messages. So don't hesitate and don't be shy.
Yeah, that would be great. And I will, I'll put those in the show notes below. So that'll be awesome. And I love that you are going with clairechandler.net. That's fabulous. And it has just been so wonderful having a conversation with you. I appreciate you bringing your wisdom, your expertise here and your energy. Just love it. And it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Same here. I really enjoyed it.
Yep. So listeners, thank you for joining us this week. And like always, please be sure to subscribe, like, comment, and always share with a friend. And we will see you next week. Have a great one. Thank you for being a part of the Winning in Business podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode and want to rise up to your next level of success, but are worried about increased stress, time for work and yourself and your family, not to mention being exhausted, I'd like to invite you to a complimentary strategy call where I'll show you how you can do it all. I'll help you reclaim time, keep your sanity, handle the chaos with ease, and move to the next level of success that you deserve and desire. I hope you found value in listening today. Please always leave your comments, feedback, or questions. We check them all. I want you to continue winning in business and reach your next level of success. See you next time.